Good to see you, the cricket guy.
Evening, Mac. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. It's great to have you on as always. And also Tony. Good to see you, Tony. You all right?
Yes, I'm fine, thanks. And you?
Yeah,
Good.
very good, very good. And it's good to see you, the man, the legend, with us in residence. So it's all good. So look, we're going to talk about the people right in front of us. If you're listening, it is the England Test team. It's been announced this week. We're going to have a good chat on that. The boys are going to discuss about what they think of the team and is it the right team for the upcoming test. And we're going to talk about ball tampering. With the Australians, this big ball tampering's got a long and decorated history, which the boys will obviously get into. But let's first get into the English Test team. So over to you, Steve.
Yeah, cheers, Mac, and good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, so one of the big weeks in English cricket every year is when the first test side of the home summer gets announced, and it was done this week. So new arrangements for the England team. Ed Smith, who was the chief selector, is no longer in post, and Chris Silverwood, the England coach, is now not only is he coaching, but he's also the selector, and he picked his first wood squad. I guess Root would have had an input into this, and I think James Taylor, the former England batsman, who's kind of a roving scout around counties, would have had some input as well. In squad, I wouldn't say it was a surprising squad, but to get our teeth into. So, Tony, first thing to say, Silverwood's first squad. Anything you read into it from Silverwood as opposed to Ed Smith straight off the bat?
Well, he's yes, but I've only real one general thing to make, and that is the absence of spin bowlers. He's obviously decided that the two grounds, Lords and Edgbaston, they're going to favour the pace bowlers, and he's picked what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out and out pace bowlers.
6, I think. Yeah.
Is it 6? Find this one. Stone, Robinson, Broad, Anderson, Wood, Overton. Yes, 6. You're right. So he's only picked Leach as the spinner. Admittedly, after his exploits, Root can turn his arm over, but he's definitely put all his eggs in the pace bowling attack. Yeah,
that's a good point. I guess that was always the way, and in fact, I think Don Bess was talking about in the early season. He was doing some media work before the season started for Yorkshire, and he very much gave me the impression from what he was saying that he'd been told already that he wouldn't be selected this summer. And was kind of told to go away and, mature his game a little bit, get his length a little bit more consistent. And so I read that. I mean, he didn't say as much, but I thought, I'll be surprised if I see Bess this summer in a test side. I was surprised. I thought one of the younger spinners might have got in and around the squads for the experience, particularly when they were naming such a large squad. But it does look very much like Leach will play as the sole spinner, and it will be a question of how many pacemen he wants to fit in the side and what the balance will be. I mean, Leach is bowling so far this season. He's played 6 matches in the county championship. He's taken 9 wickets. What's the average of just under 34 and a bit? So nothing special. And his strike rate is going to be pretty awful. Strike rate, a wicket every 86 balls. So he's not really had a fabulous start to the county summer with the ball, Jack Leach. But I mean, he's certainly England's #1 spinner. He's a premier spinner. And again, you'd have to say, bowling in English conditions in April and May, well, how many chances was he really going to get? It's going to be seamers taking wickets.
To come back to my hobby horse, the only spinner who's done anything is Simon Harmer.
Yeah,
and he's South African, which is a great shame. And the change in rules over the EU when he was on the brink of joining England on the qualification rule, and now that's all gone up in smoke. I mean, he took 9 for 80 the other day. It's just amazing. If we had him on the team, I don't think Leach would get in either. I think it would just be Harmer.
Possibly.
But however, that's all hypothetical.
It is. That is. Sadly for you, Tony.
Sadly for me,
you will not see your man in an English.
A bonus for Essex, Steve. A bonus for Essex.
Absolutely. So Leach is your only spinner. the other kind of key person who I sort of always was going to get picked, of course, is Joe Root. He's had a pretty good summer so far with the bat. He's scored 100. He's averaging in the mid-30s, 36, and he scored nearly 300 runs in 8 innings. So he's doing okay. He's not pulled up too many trees, let's be honest, but he's Joe Root, and he will do well in the test. There's no reason to worry about Joe Root going into the team. I guess, Tony, there's a few experienced names around, but with the number of players who aren't available for England because of the IPL or because of injury, there's a bit more pressure on Root in the squad, I think, to carry the experience.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I didn't think Sibley would get picked. I thought they would allow him to recover more from his broken finger. And when I was picking my squad, I didn't have Sibley in at all. I just or Stone. I thought the two of them would give him more time to recover from their injury and sort of bowl and bat themselves into form. Although Sibley, of course, he did score, I think he got 40 odd not out today. Mm-hmm. But he's gone for experience. He hasn't gone overly for fantastic form in as far as the batting is concerned. Burns is making his way back in again. He scored 64 today. I think he will open.
Yeah,
he's run into form. The only thing about Burns is as I've said before, he's a bit like Root used to be. He goes to 50 many times, but doesn't seem to get to 3 figures very often. Mm-hmm. And I think that he and Sibley will open in the match. Sibley got in. I had Lees of Durham in as instead of Sibley, so I don't have any quarrel with Sibley being picked. I was just surprised they picked him so quickly after the broken finger.
I'm not sure he'll play. I have to be honest.
Do you? Oh, I think he'll play.
I think Burns is an absolute certainty. He is in good form. He's averaging 50 this season so far, and I think he's doing very well. But I think with Zach Crawley in the squad, I think they will open with Crawley, and I think they'll find somebody else to bat at number 3. I'm just not sure Sibley's in good enough form. I mean, let alone he's been out with injury. I'm not sure his record recently is good enough to warrant putting him back in without much cricket. I have to be honest. He may play, but I think Crawley and Burns will open.
I have to be straight up. I'll put my small little house on it being Burns, Sibley, Crawley, Root, Pope, Lawrence as the top 6.
Right.
The only other person who can get into that top 6 is a batsman wicketkeeper, Bracey. Now, I don't think that he will replace those. I think that Silverwood reckons that Burns, Sibley, Crawley need all the practice they can get, especially against a reasonable pace attack, which for the first, I mean, they've got even without Bolt, they've got a pretty reasonable pace attack. So I think he'll want them. He admitted in an interview last week, for better or for worse, that really the Ashes is the dominant aim this year, even though they are, as he stressed, important matches against New Zealand and the 5 against, is it 5 or 4 or 5 against India?
Yeah, 5, I think, yeah.
Yeah, it is Australia is aiming for. Therefore, I feel he has to test the top order against pace, because that's what they're going to get in Australia. Now, it's going to be a different type of pace because it's going to swing a lot more in England, whereas in Australia, it'll be a more raw pace. But I feel that, as I say, I put my little house on the top 6 being Burns, Sibley, Crawley, Root, Pope and Lawrence.
Well, I think that's interesting. I don't think Sibley will play, and I think Crawley and Burns will open, and I think Bracey might get a bat at number 3. I think they want to look at him as a. I think he's so far away from wearing the gloves regularly.
I have to say this then: if Sibley doesn't play, what's the point in picking him? Because he needs practice after his injury.
Well, possibly. I think maybe just to have him in and around the squad to keep an eye on him. I don't know.
Carry the drink.
No, not really. Not as such, but maybe just to have him around in the squad to make him feel still part of it. But I wouldn't be surprised if they shake it up a little bit. and I wouldn't be surprised to see Bracey in there, or indeed that they leave a batsman out from 6 and end up with perhaps one of Pope or Lawrence batting at 3, and Fuchs batting at 6, and packing the bowlers, because they've certainly picked enough of them to do that.
Well, yes. The interesting thing about the squad as a whole, when you look at who's not been selected for reasons other than cricket, if I would put it that way, Wokes, Butler, Bairstow, Billings, Sam Curran, Archer, Stokes, and possibly even Bess. There's more there. The 15 that they've picked, Wokes would be 16, Butler 17, Bairstow 18, Billings 19, Sam Curran 20, Stokes 21, Archer 22, and they've got to prune that lot down somehow to what, 16 or 17.
No, I think definitely they're probably bringing Robinson, Overton, and Stone together to have a look at them all in the way they did with the spinners over the winter. I guess bring a few of them together and see. I guess in England you have to have them in the squad, otherwise counties won't release them to be available to have a look at them. So it's a fairly cheeky way of getting a look at some of these guys. And I think Silverwood has already said that is it not that Overton and Robinson are really competing for one space, which is interesting. I guess if you think about Broad and Anderson is almost one pick, because I think they tend not to play them in the same test match.
That's correct. Yes.
So maybe that's effectively what Broad will play one, Anderson will play the other. Wood will probably play most tests. Then I guess if they're thinking, if they are going to go in with 4 quick bowlers, maybe they're saying Stone is going to play because they've had him before and they've seen what he can do. And then Overton and Robinson. I mean, I think Overton and Robinson both have done enough to get a cap so far this summer.
Well, they both have the advantage that they would strengthen the tail.
Yeah,
they're both reasonable bats. But if you're saying they're going in with 4 pace bowlers and you think Leach will play, that means the batsman has to drop out.
Yeah,
because you've got 5 plus a wicketkeeper. In other words, you're saying Folks won't play and they'll play Bracey as a wicketkeeper batsman.
Or they might think that Folks is good enough to bat at 6 because he bats higher for Surrey. I mean, they might think that. In English conditions, they might think that.
Maybe they want to test him at 6.
Yeah, possibly. I mean,
obviously Bracey is a strong rival. I have to be honest, and I don't know Bracey's caliber as a keeper. But history tells me that they're prepared to sacrifice a little in the pure wicket-keeping department. Yeah. For the all-round ability of that player, if he's a good batsman.
Yeah. On that though, I mean, I think Folks is an excellent gloveman, isn't he? And I think they don't lose very much. But it would be interesting if Silverwood is looking to have a 5-and-5 team with one wicketkeeper batsman that sits in the middle, kind of batting at 6. Well, Butler could definitely do that if everybody was available, and maybe he needs to see Folks do that in these test matches to see if he's not just a replacement for Butler with the gloves, but actually a replacement for Butler in the balanced side with 5 batsmen and 5 bowlers.
Yeah, of course there is the other thing, of course, that when Stokes comes back, Stokes will give you the other pace man and a batsman.
That's true.
So maybe you've got Stokes plus 3 pace bowlers and a spinner.
Yeah. That's true. So you could balance the side in a different way.
You could back Folks, or if Bracey doesn't, at 7, and then have per many 3 from goodness knows who and Leach.
Yeah, possibly. You don't think there's a chance, Tony, that he will leave Leach out altogether at Lords and not just go replacement?
Leach will play. To me, it's heresy that you go into a test with Root as the only spin bowler. And you can't really call him a spin bowler, although he's had some dramatic success from time to time. But it really strikes to the heart of me if England go in, when you think going back to the days of Laker, Locke, Underwood, the last spinner, his name escapes me. Lovely spinner, played for Northants.
Graham Swan?
Yeah, Swan. That's right. When you think back to all those good spinners, and I mean the thought of going in with to a test match without one spinner, a recognised spinner anyway, to me is it's unbelievable. But I have to say it's not out of the question that he says, right, the only way we can test who's the best combination of bowlers to take to Australia is to play as many of them as we can in the test match. I mean, Archer's going to go, provided he's fit. Archer, Broad, Anderson and Wood are going to to aren't they?
Yeah.
So you're looking.
You only need another one or two, don't you, in the squad? Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
We've got to remember him.
Yeah. Your favourite, Sam Curran.
And Chris Wokes. I mean, it's really a shoehorn job. And there's going to be upsetting players.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Wokes as well. No, it's interesting, and it will be very interesting if one. I mean, obviously one of at least Robinson, Overton, and Stone are going to play. At least one of them's going to play. If they really put their hand up and do very, very well in these next couple of tests, then that's great for Silverwood. He's got another option, but that makes it all the harder to settle on a final selection of fast bowlers for the Ashes. That'll be really interesting to see. Well, so I suppose the other thing is if Lawrence plays and Root plays, then you've probably got 12 to 15 overs a day if you needed to, out of a couple of spinners who wouldn't let you down, who probably wouldn't rip through a team's tail, but they would be able to pass through some overs.
I looked up Lawrence's bowling record, and I don't think he's bowled 15 overs in first-class cricket. I can't see him actually coming on for turning it, not in a test match. I can't see it. I think it's just a presentation job of a few runs if he does. I think it's a very difficult decision. What he really needs, I think, is, on the one hand, I say what he needs is a dry summer which would give him some pacey wickets so they can really judge what the bowlers are going to be like in Australian conditions. But on the other hand, if he gets nice dry wickets, that's where the spinners should come into their own.
Yeah, that's true.
And he should try somebody like Parkinson, maybe even, and certainly the other young fella who's far better bat than
Critchley.
Yes, Critchley. That's right. So I mean, but he hasn't featured, and I do. It's probably a year too early for those young players. I looked up, for instance, Burns is playing for Surrey. They're 4th out of 6 in the table. Sibley's playing for Warwickshire. They're 5th out of 6. Crawley's playing for Kent. They're 6th out of 6. Root, okay, Yorkshire are top. Pope for Surrey, and they're 4th out of 6. Lawrence, Essex have made their way to the top. And Overton is 2nd. They're 2nd, and Durham, they're 2nd. But an awful lot of the teams. Robinson's playing for Sussex. They're 5th out of 6. So he hasn't picked players solely on their performances this year. I think he's gone steady and steady ahead as she is, or sort of thing. He's picked the tried and trusted, and he wants to give, particularly, I think, the likes of Burns, Sibley, and Crawley, the chance to gain A, confidence on, and B, cement their positions for Australia.
Well, you make a good case. You make a good case for Sibley. I have to say, I just have a suspicion that he's not going to play.
Yeah, I can't have it, because I think that if he wasn't going to play, I think they would have said go and get some batting practice with Warwickshire. But I've been wrong before, Steve, and I'll be wrong again.
Unheard of, Tony. Unheard of. No, that's good. Maybe it's just the romantic in me. I want to see Bracey get a game. I'd like to see him have a go. He looks like the sort of player that will do well at test level to me. He's scored, and he's in good form. He's scored nearly 500 runs so far this. He scored 406 more runs than Sibley so far this summer, which is not to be sniffed at. I know Sibley's had his injuries, of course, but he's got the runs on the board. He's averaging over 50. I think Lawrence looks set to play because Lawrence is in very good form as well.
I have to wear my heart on my sleeve. I know that Bracey is well thought of, and he's been in the reserves, and he's been on the Lions tours, and he's done all that sort of thing. I'm not yet totally convinced. But having said that, if you don't pick him and play him, you can't tell whether he's got the temperament for Test match cricket. I've yet to be convinced about Bracey, I have to say.
Well,
if it was me, Butler and Folkes would be my two players going to Australia. But I fully admit, if Folkes doesn't deliver batting wise, and he got a duck today, I think, then Bracey is going to be pressurising very heavily, because Butler obviously is a shoo-in.
Yeah, what I would say for Bracey at the moment is he can't do a lot more than he's doing. He must be doing everything they're asking of him, and so it's good that he's edging his way into the picture. You're right. On a tour, as a pure wicket keeper, nobody's a pure wicket keeper these days, but as a wicket keeper, he's likely to miss out to Butler and Folkes as the two main keepers. So he's got to try to do a best though, and demonstrate he can bat.
But against that, most keepers, and there's quite a few reasonable keepers around the county scene at the moment, most keepers are pretty good standing back. And if it goes as I suspect, that it's a heavy emphasis on pace, a keeper in Australia will be a wicket keeper who's certainly adequate, if not better, against the faster bowlers. Folkes he's good everywhere, but he doesn't then have the advantage of being such a brilliant glove man and standing up to the spinners. So he's not a shoo-in for the tour, in my opinion. So he's got it all to prove. And I think that he'll play in one match, or let's put it this way, he'll keep in one match and Bracey will keep in the other. And then it will be very interesting to see how it pans out against the Indians. Will they bring back Butler and let Butler keep? We'll have to wait and see.
That's an interesting thought. They've picked certainly enough players to have one play one game and one play the next. That's for sure. I think it's interesting. I guess overall I was disappointed that a Parkinson, or perhaps a Verdi, but probably a Parkinson didn't get a pick in the squad. I think there's one fast bowler too many there. For the balance of the squad, but I can understand why they've all been picked. I absolutely can understand why. Broad and Anderson are both fit. You pick them. Woods they see as an integral part of the team, particularly when Archer's not available, and I think they often see Wood and Archer as being, the very fast spearhead type bowlers that can become on first change. Stone, Overton, Robinson have all done well and taken wickets and look good players. Stone's done well when he's played for England, and as fast bowlers often are unlucky with injury. Overton has got some test experience. He's gone away and he's better than he's been. So why not pick him? So yeah, I can see why they've all been picked, but I guess it's the balance of the squad that I would say is not quite there.
I think it may be. You see, there are only 2 tests, Steve, against New Zealand. Maybe India will tell a different tale when you've got 5 tests, and maybe he's going to test some of them. As you say, and there is merit in this, that he'll have some in to get used to being in the squad, the likes of Robinson and Overton and even Stone, although Stone was with the squad in India, and Bracey as well. I feel that maybe it's going to be until the 4th test against India before we know where we are. And I can't help thinking that Silverwood has the Ashes tour in his mind, and if you like, all roads lead to Melbourne. That's I can't help looking at it this way, with the top 3 batsmen and the fast bowlers. Leach is going to go to Australia, let's face it.
Yeah. The
other spinner going to Australia, well, Bess, I would take Bess, but I think that, I just feel that he's perhaps not viewed. I think he's carried the can for perceived weakness in India. And there is a young Surrey spinner, Verdi, who started off the season very well, an off spinner. It's possible if he has a good season that he might get picked against India to see whether how he measures up against the Indian batsmen who are good players of spin. But I tell you what, I can't help thinking that the summer's weather is going to play an important part here, because if it is a wettish summer, it's not going to be in favour of the spinners. They're not. Their fingers will be cold. They're not going to be able to grip the ball. They're not going to get the wickets that would turn, except if you get an absolute, fizzer. I just feel that it's a lot may depend upon the weather, and and I would like to see him produce fast wickets and see what our pacemen have got about them.
Very good, Tony. Excellent. Well, you said all roads lead to Melbourne, and certainly roads that lead to Australia. And one thing I wanted to talk to you about this week was the kind of back from nowhere, the whole drama and the controversy around the ball tampering in Australia. So, as you'll remember, folk will probably remember, the Australians were caught on camera against South Africa, taking to the field with some sandpaper and applying that to the ball in order to rough one side up more quickly, which you get a ball rough on one side and relatively smooth on the other. It moves through the air in different. The air moves across the surface at different speeds, and it helps swing. So that was, and the aftermath of that, Steve Smith lost the captaincy and then didn't play for a while. David Warner didn't play for a while and was generally.
Well, they were both banned for a year.
They were both banned for a year. Yeah. Cameron Bancroft, a younger, less experienced batsman, Australian batsman, he also spent some time out of the side and banned. And they all had and they hit them very hard. And I think as well we would say that it was a moment of real deep introspection in Australian cricket. Australian fans, the Australian team have put a lot of store in really reflecting on how they played the game and trying to play in a different way. And I think one of the reasons that Tim Paine was made the Australian captain was because he was going to lead the side in a slightly different way with a slightly different style. Now, obviously, Australia had maybe a little bit of a wobbly period under him to start with, but have come back and are now a very, very good side. And I think I made them very unlucky not to have made the World Test Championship final. I think they were probably the second best team after India. And
I think had they gone to South Africa, they would have made the final.
Yeah. But they're back. And then Cameron Bancroft, who's playing for Durham this season in the county championship, gave an interview with The Guardian this week where he was asked again about the ball tampering, and the way he referred to it was he didn't say it outright, but I think the inference that most people drew from that was that everybody on the Australian team, certainly the bowlers, were aware that it was going on. Now that's drawn a pretty furious, or maybe not furious, but certainly very strident and stern response from those four fast bowlers, from Stark and Hazelwood and Cummins and three fast bowlers and Lyon the spinner, maintaining very, very clearly that they did not know, that they couldn't tell at the time, and that they weren't aware of it. And indeed they named I think it was Richard Illingworth and Nigel Long, the two umpires that were officiating in that game. They were checking the ball between every over, and they didn't see anything amiss with the ball either. So the notion that, oh, come on, you must have known is unfair. And they've said very clearly, that this innuendo about their role in it needs to stop, and people need to move on. So it was interesting that this came up again. It's a real touchstone in cricket, isn't it? The notion of ball tampering or any kind of on-field cheating like that. But this has become a real cause célèbre, Tony.
I've got my own opinions about this, and I'm afraid they're a little way out. I think it is politicking. I think it suits England, and they're my own country, but I think it suits England that this retains its prominence, because the Australian, if we're to believe the media, the Australian public did not like what happened. and gave the three offenders, and Smith and Warner, I think in particular, a hell of a hard time. And so it perhaps suits England to have this rear its ugly head again, particularly as in the last month or so, Smith has indicated that should he be called upon to captain Australia, he would be willing to sacrifice himself and take up the captaincy. And maybe this then would place extra pressure on him in the English eyes. To my mind, Steve, ball tampering's been going on for decades. I can go back, I can remember the Pakistanis who were well known for their ability to swing the ball, and particularly reverse swing. And then the shady view was given of how are they managing to get this ball to reverse swing, etc., etc. And then finally some things were found out. The West Indies also then were alleged to be picking at the seam and this sort of thing to get the ball stand up. And then I heard Mike Atherton trying to defend the indefensible the other day on Nasser Hussein's show of the grit and the sand in his pocket, and he then inexplicably put the ball in his pocket, and he suffered no punishment. He was found guilty, but he was not punished. And I saw Broad giving an interview this week about how to make the ball in connection with this re-emergence, if you like, of the ball tampering, and what you must and must not do if you want the ball to reverse swing. And he told the story, for instance, of Jimmy Anderson getting at Broad because Broad wasn't bringing the ball down on the seam, so that one side of the ball where the ball was pitching was roughing up, and that made it more difficult to reverse swing. So there's an art in getting reverse swing, and the art, like all arts, have their dark side. And I think that the three guys have had their punishment. And in fact, I thought the punishment was exceptionally harsh for what they did. Although they did use what I would call artificial means, but it's a fine line between dirt in your pocket and sandpaper in your pocket. They both achieve the same end. But I feel that, to my mind, we should wash our hands and get on with playing cricket. And the fine art of getting a ball to reverse swing, which is down to caring for the ball on the pitch, and making sure that one side is rough and the other side is smooth as far as possible, so that reverse swing comes about. Should be allowed. And I think, just to repeat myself at the end, there's a lot of hypocrisy being spoken here.
Yeah, I guess it's one of these things. I think I agree. I mean, it certainly suits England's purposes in the long run up to an Ashes tour for the Australians to be slightly off kilter, and for there to be dissension in the ranks, as it were, because obviously it would be very difficult now for Bancroft, no matter how well he plays, probably to return to that environment with those four bowlers, for example. But I mean, I think for me, it was probably, if he agreed to be interviewed, he must have known that he would be asked about that. And I guess I don't know. I guess he maybe he feels he carried the can, and others should have taken more senior players should have taken their share of the rap. But was making that point. I don't know, but it's very interesting. I mean, you're right. The history of this is extensive, even back to 1990. Chris Pringle, the New Zealander, with his captain Martin Crowe, years later admitted they used a bottle top to rough up one side of the ball. It's and Atherton, say dirt in pocket. He maintained maintained then, and I think maintains now, that he had dirt in his pockets to dry his hands, and that's what it was used for, and it wasn't.
Well, I saw his interview, and he didn't. Let's put it this way: he didn't plead not guilty.
Mm-hmm. Yes, no, quite. And then, as you say,
I'm an old cynic. Do you not think there could be more forces at play here with regard to Smith possibly returning to captain Australia? And if they heap more controversy in his direction, that there might be a little bit of an outcry, or he might feel under greater pressure, either not to take the captaincy or not to perform just as well if the spotlight is on him like a microscope.
I rather suspect that Steve Smith would have the strength of character to say, I admitted what I did, I accepted the punishment, and I got on with it, and now I'm back, and I've been back for a period of time, and if the selectors ask me to be captain, then I will do it, and none of that's a problem. I don't think Smith was the kind of player that would wilt under any pressure like that. I don't think Warner is either, to be honest.
Definitely not Warner. No, definitely not.
So I think if this is a ploy, then I think it's probably not likely to be very fruitful, except in the margins where, say, someone like Bancroft probably would struggle to be welcomed back into the Australian team environment. If it's a play to try to stop Smith getting handed the captaincy, then I don't think this is going to register in Australian cricket, to be perfectly honest with you, and I don't think it's. I
agree. I just threw it out as a.
Yeah, no. It's interesting, but it just goes to show, doesn't it, that how this is being treated. Cricket Australia again this week have said they'll speak to Bancroft and see if he has any further information, and David Saker, I think the Australian bowling coach at the time, said, well, if there's more information, then if the investigation needs to be reopened, etc., etc.
So is there a deeper plot then to get the likes of Cummins and Stark punished for 2 years later, so they can't play in the Test series? I can't believe that. I can't believe we would stoop so low.
No, I don't think that's the case. I can't see it myself. I don't know. It's interesting. I can't quite explain why, Tony, but this particular instance of ball tampering appears to have become a cause célèbre.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas others were an incident at the time, and then they were gone. There's an incident with Jimmy Anderson and Stuart Broad, who were stopping the ball with their spikes.
Yeah.
And they were Nasser Hussain said that he wasn't. He wasn't very happy with that behaviour, and South Africa didn't make a formal apology. It was kind of dealt with, but maybe there's something about the way it was done, with clearly, if you like, malice aforethought to have sandpaper, which is an absolute. There's no reason for anyone to have sandpaper on a cricket pitch, and it was just, maybe it was so egregious as a way of doing it.
But I still come back to the fact they were found guilty. They were punished. They served their time. For God's sake, let's move on. Yeah. That's my view.
I agree with you.
And to be totally biblical, let he who is without sin cast the first stone, or cast the first cricket ball, whatever you want. I just think it's politicking, and much as I like the Guardian, I feel that the Guardian have run thinking there's a good bit of story. I mean, Bancroft has to be rehabilitated because he's captaining Durham this year now. He's come back as captain. Now, I don't know that he's good enough to get into the Australian team anyway. We'll not know that. But I think the Aussies have the ability to talk this out, or argue it out, or utter a few profanities amongst themselves, and then go on the pitch and play the game. So I don't personally think that Bancroft will suffer from that angle, even though he's allegedly said that.
The one thing in his favour, I guess, is that if the Australians have a weakness at the moment, it's in who will open with Warner. They haven't really been able to settle on anybody fixed who's there. When I looked at their batting and the review of the World Test Championship, that was really the only major weakness in the side was whoever opened with. They haven't got any runs from whoever opens with Warner for a couple of years. So if Bancroft is an opening bat, there is potentially a role there, but whether or not he would get it, I guess it may throw that into question. I think the Australians are claiming that they've already had a clear the air talks and everything's great and we're all buddies again. So who knows? But no, interesting. I agree with you, Tony. I think it's ancient history, and I think the game should move on. I just think it's very interesting that this particular instance of ball tampering has become such a high profile one and such a cause célèbre. And it's funny how sometimes the media perhaps takes some of these things and makes them more of a, elongates the story.
It's a good story and it sells papers. It certainly sells sporting papers anyway.
Yeah.
Especially with the and if it doesn't go away, it could well gain traction during the summer as we lead up to the Ashes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I'm of the opinion it is politicking, and I would like to see it put to bed and let's get on with playing the game of cricket.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. What a good place to leave that topic. Mac, there you go. We've had a look at the Test team and we've had a look at the recurring story of the ball tampering.
Well, I noticed. Well, can I come back before we go to Mac? Mm-hmm. Would you like to pick your 11 for the first Test, Steve?
Okay, I'll pick my 11 for the first Test. I will say Burns and Crawley to open. I will say Lawrence at 3, Root at 4, Pope at 5, Folkes at 6. Then 4. Well, Leach will be the spinner, and 4 fast bowlers will be Broad. It will be Wood. It will be Robinson, and it will be Overton. There you go.
Right.
Bit of a long tail, but
okay. I'll pick mine, and we'll see how we go. There's a bit of competition. I picked Burns, Sibley, Crawley at 3, Root at 4, Pope at 5, Lawrence at 6. Folkes at 7, possibly. I'm not sold totally. Bracey could go at 7. And then I would pick Overton at 8, Leach at 9, Wood at 10, and I think Stone will get in at 11. And much as I would pick Robinson myself, but I think Stone will get in at 11 of the younger bowlers, and it'll be one of Broad or Anderson, of course. But who knows which?
Yeah, I'll toss a coin before play.
So our main difference really is Sibley or Crawley to open. You don't have Sibley in the team.
No,
I do. So we'll just see how it goes.
Yeah, very good, Tony. Very good. We'll see how we get on. There you go, Mac. England team and the ball tampering.
Thank you very much, boys. And it's been a pleasure listening to all that's going on with the ball tampering and the history behind the ball tampering. This is not the first time it's ever happened. So it's lovely to hear about that and to hear your teams for the English Test team. So we'll obviously hold you to that. And
what I would say, Mac, is over the last couple of weeks when Tony and I have been looking at who's been performing in the county championship and who might be thrusting their way in. Regular viewers and listeners will have heard the names of Bracey and Robinson and Overton. We've been picking them a few weeks out, so let's see how we get on through the summer, Tony, and see if we pick any more winners that are emerged from the pack in the county game as the summer goes on as well.
Brilliant. Yeah. Well, fantastic stuff, boys. Well, thank you so much. Always a pleasure. Always to have your thoughts and comments. And everybody watching, thank you so much. It's been appreciated as always. Anyone listening, thank you as also. Just leave some comments. Let us know your thoughts about the upcoming England Test team and what your thoughts are about the ball tampering. It's very interesting to think about all that's going on. And look, we've got plenty of cricket news to always talk about. We'll be here every week. On Thursdays, talking at 8 p.m. If you want to join us live on any of the channels, YouTube, Facebook, we're also on Twitch. So that'd be great if you can join us. You can also follow Steve on at SFTV_cricket. So if you're watching, obviously you'll see that at the bottom. But if you're not, it's at SFTV_cricket, and that'll be in the show notes. So thanks once again, boys. And look, it's been great. And thank you, anybody, for watching or listening.